There's a specific kind of failure to a man tying a tie in the rearview mirror of his own work truck. I want that on the record first, before anything else happens tonight. It was 6:15, the school parking lot, half empty, the lights just coming on. I had the visor flipped down and the little vanity mirror angled at my throat, and I was getting the knot wrong for the third time. Too short on one end. Then somehow too long on both, which I didn't think was geometrically possible. My hands knew how to strip a 30-amp line in the dark, but they did not remember this. I'm Owen, I'm 41, I run wire for a living. The tie was navy with a thin diagonal stripe, and it had lived rolled up in my glove box for 2 years, next to the registration and a half-eaten roll of antacids. The collar of my one good shirt was pressing into my neck like an accusation. I don't dress up. There is nothing in my week that asks me to. You don't run conduit in a tie, and you don't wear cufflinks into a crawl space. But it was parent-teacher night, and Lily had asked me that morning, over cereal, in that flat little voice she uses when she's already decided I'll say no, whether I was going to come looking nice. So here I was, in the parking lot, looking nice and strangling slightly. Let me tell you about Lily, because honestly she's the only part of this I'm any good at explaining. She's 8. 3rd grade. She had a gap where her front teeth used to be, and a habit of narrating her own drawings while she makes them, under her breath, like a sports announcer for a game only she can see. She eats around the crust of everything. She believes with total conviction that our dog is plotting something against us. She is the funniest person I know, and she has no idea. And I have decided not to tell her, because the day she finds out she'll start performing it, and it won't be the same. I have had her on my own for 4 years. I should say it plainer than that, because 4 years sounds like a long time and a clean number, and it wasn't clean. Her mom and I didn't blow up. That's the thing nobody warns you about. There's no big scene to point to, no door slammed, no plates broken. We just got quieter and quieter until one day the quiet had a name, and the name was divorce, and we signed the papers in an office that smelled like burnt coffee, and neither of us cried, which somehow felt worse than if we had. She moved 2 states over about a year after. New job, new man, eventually I think, though Lily and I don't talk about that. She calls on Sundays. She means well. She is mostly a voice on a phone that Lily holds with both hands and answers in single syllables, and then hands back to me, and then goes very quiet for about an hour, drawing. So it's me. It's been me for a while now. Lunches and lice checks and the exact correct diagonal way to cut a sandwich. Reading the same 4 pages of the same dragon book until I could recite them with my eyes shut, which I sometimes do eyes shut, while she watches my face to catch me skipping a line. And I want to be honest with you about what that does to a man, because the brochures lie about it. It's not that I'm unhappy. I keep wanting to say that, like it's a defense I can hide behind. I'm not unhappy, I'm just gone. Somewhere in those 4 years I sort of folded myself up and put myself away in a drawer, and what's left walking around is the part that functions, the part that gets her to school, the part that makes the money and signs the permission slips, and remembers it's pajama day. If you asked me who I am, I'd have one answer ready for you. I'm Lily's dad, and that's the whole sentence. There used to be more sentence than that. I'm fairly sure there did. I just can't always find the rest of it anymore, and most days I've stopped looking. You get used to a smaller version of yourself. You'd be surprised how comfortable a drawer can get. I got the tie right on the 4th try, or right enough. I looked at myself in that little visor mirror, a square of face cut off at the eyebrows, and the man looking back had more gray in his stubble than I remembered agreeing to. I flipped the visor up. I told myself, out loud, in the empty truck, the way you do when nobody's listening, okay. Just go in, say hello to the teacher, get the report card, be a normal dad for 15 minutes, and come home. The school looked the way every elementary school looks at night. Half the lights on, the rest dark. That construction paper smell that gets into the brick and never leaves. A long hallway with art taped up at exactly child height. All of it titled in fat marker, MY Family, and our trip, and a genuinely alarming number of cats. I found her classroom by the number on the door. Room 11. There was a little laminated sign taped under the number. Welcome families, and under that, in smaller print, the teacher's name. I'll be honest with you, I didn't read it. Not really. My eyes passed over it the way your eyes pass over a sign you've seen 100 times before. I was reading it for information, not for meaning. The way you read a road number, a name on a door. I had read a dozen forms that fall with that name printed at the top of them. I just never once slowed down enough to let it actually land. That's the part I keep coming back to, later. I had the answer in my hand for 3 months and I never opened it. There were 2 other parents ahead of me, so I stood in the hall and waited my turn and looked at the cats. A whole construction paper world full of orange cats with enormous whiskers. One of them, I noticed, had been drawn with a careful gap in its front teeth, and the family standing in the picture beside it was 3 figures, and then a smaller 4th figure off to the side, set a little apart, in pencil, like the artist had run out of certainty by the time she got around to that one. I knew that drawing. I knew the hand that made it. I made a quiet note to ask her about it later, and not to ask too directly, because Lily closes up like a fist if you ask too directly. You have to come at her sideways, the way you'd coax a cat down off a roof. The mom in front of me came out with her kid's folder and a tight, polite smile, and the dad before her had already gone, and then it was just me alone in the hall, and a voice from inside the room said, "Come on in." And here is the strange thing about a voice. I have a face I would have braced for. If you had told me, an hour earlier, that I was about to see this particular person, I'd have had a whole second to arrange myself, to set my features into place, to become the version of me that handles things calmly. But you don't get warned by a voice. A voice comes through the door before you do. It gets in under the part of you that prepares for things. Because I knew that voice before my brain had any chance to catch up to it. It went straight past 41-year-old Owen with the bad tie and the gray stubble. It went past the divorce and the 4 years and the folded-up man in the drawer. It reached all the way back to a 17-year-old kid who used to wait by a blue locker just to hear it, and it pulled some old, dumb, glad thing up out of the bottom of my chest before I had any say in the matter at all. I didn't move for a second. I want to be clear that nothing dramatic happened out there in that hallway. I didn't gasp. I didn't drop anything. From the outside, if you'd been standing there watching, you'd have seen a tired man in a navy tie pause for half a beat at a classroom door, and that's all you'd have seen. The whole earthquake was on the inside of me. I told myself I was wrong. That's the rational thing to do. You hear a voice, it sounds like someone from a long time ago, your brain plays a cheap trick on you, and then you walk in and it's a total stranger, and you feel a little foolish for the jolt. That happens to people. I held on to that for the length of exactly 1 step. Then I walked into room 11. She was standing behind a low table covered in folders, with a string of paper letters sagging on the wall, behind her spelling out a word I didn't read, and the overhead lights were doing that flat fluorescent thing to everyone in the building. They were doing it to her too, and it did not matter even slightly. It was Maya. It was Maya the way you'd know your own name shouted across a crowd. Older, sure. We're all older now. The lines by her eyes earned the same way mine were. Her hair was shorter than it used to be, cut to her jaw, more silver coming in at the part than there'd have been 10 years ago. But it was the same face underneath all of it. The same exact face that I had spent the better part of 2 years of my young life looking at, like it explained something nobody else had figured out yet. I want to do the math out loud, because the number is the thing that actually knocked the wind out of me. I last saw this person when we were 19 years old. We are 41 now. That's 22 years. 22 years she had been a closed door at the very back of my head, a thing I almost never opened on purpose, and now the door was standing open and she was 3 feet away from me, holding my daughter's report card in her hand. She looked up. She had Lily's folder already half extended toward me, the smile already on, the professional one, the warm but efficient one teachers must wear 40 times a night. "Hi," she started, "you must be Lily's da." And then she stopped. I watched it happen across her whole face. I watched the sentence she'd said 100 times already that night just walk clean off a cliff in the middle of a word. I watched her eyes do the same fast, helpless resorting that mine must have just done a second before. The searching, then the catching, then the small physical jolt of a thing arriving 22 years too late and 3 months too early all at once. Her hand with the folder in it dropped maybe an inch. Her mouth stayed open around the rest of a word she was no longer going to finish. For 1 full second, neither of us was a parent or a teacher. We were just 2 people who used to know each other completely, standing in a room full of paper cats, while the fluorescent light buzzed overhead, and neither one of us remembered to breathe. She got there half a step ahead of me. I'll give her that much. She always was the faster of the 2 of us. "Owen," she said. Just that, just my name. Like, the name itself was the whole thing she'd managed to find. Not Lily's dad. Not, sir, my actual name, said out loud like it still belonged to a whole person, which was the first time anyone had used it that way, in longer than I was comfortable admitting to myself. And I stood there in my one good shirt with the knot sitting slightly off-center at my throat, and I felt the careful, folded up, 4 years quiet thing in my chest come loose at one corner, like a seam giving. And I understood that we'll understand a thing your body has figured out a beat before your mouth can catch up to it, that whatever I had walked in here ready to be tonight, I was not going to get to be it. There's a thing your body does when the floor has tilted, and you are the only one who can feel it. It keeps standing. It makes your face behave. So I made my face behave, and I said hi back, like a person who had not just had 22 years fall on him in a doorway. And the two of us stood there in room 11 3 feet apart, both of us deciding, at the exact same second and without a word, that we were going to do this the normal way. That was the agreement. Nobody signed it. We just both reached for it like a railing. "Owen Bell," she said, and looked down at the folder and looked back up. "You're Lily's dad." "I am." My own voice sounded fine. I was impressed by it. "I'm Lily's dad." I should have, the last name. She let out a small breath, almost a laugh, and didn't finish the sentence, which I appreciated, because I didn't have the end of it either. There are a lot of Bells. She'd had a Lily Bell on a class list since August, and no reason on earth to think the Bell attached to her was me. Why would she? The last time she knew my last name we were teenagers, and she used to write it on things as a joke to see how it looked. I didn't say that. Obviously, I didn't say that. "Sit," she said, and gestured at the chair across the low table from hers, a child's chair. "I want that noted. I am a grown man." And I folded down onto a plastic chair built for an 8-year-old, knees up somewhere around my ribs, while the girl I'd loved at 17 settled across from me in one exactly like it, and we both pretended that this was a dignified way for two adults to discuss a report card. For a second, neither of us could find the first sentence. She found it. She always was faster. "So." She opened the folder and flattened it with her hand, and I watched her hand do that and not her face, because her face was harder to look at. "Lily, let me tell you about Lily." "Please," I heard myself say it too fast. Yeah, that's why I'm here." "Right." A flicker of something at the corner of her mouth. "That's why you're here." And we were off, both of us hiding inside the kid like she was a room we could stand in, grateful she existed, grateful there was a third person between us to talk about, so we didn't have to talk about the other thing. She told me Lily was bright. I knew that. She told me Lily read above grade, which I didn't exactly, and which landed in my chest with a little glow I tried to keep off my face. She told me Lily was kind to the other kids, that she gave away her snack to a boy who forgot his more than once, that the aides noticed it. I had not known that either. I knew the version of my daughter who lived in my house. I did not know the version who walked around all day, being a person in a room I never got to see, and hearing it from someone else was a strange ache, a good one, like pressing a bruise on purpose. Then her face changed, just slightly. She turned a page she didn't need to turn. "I want to flag something," she said. "It's not a problem. I don't want you to hear problem." "You said problem twice now." "I know I did." That almost law again. "Okay, it's about the play." I didn't know about a play. She watched me not know about a play, and something gentle went across her, and I realized she'd already understood, from one look at my blank face, exactly how that information had failed to make it home. A note in a backpack. A note that got rained on or balled up or used to wrap a piece of gum. 8-year-olds are not reliable postal workers. She didn't say any of that, she just told me. The 3rd grade was putting on a play in 3 weeks. A small one, a class thing, parents in folding chairs in the gym. She was directing it, which is to say she'd been roped into it, which is to say nobody else volunteered. Every kid had a part. Most of the parts were a sentence or two, a tree, a townsperson, a kid who carries the lantern across the stage and says one line about a storm coming. Lily had the lantern. Lily had the one line about the storm. "And she's frozen," Maya said. "Every rehearsal, she gets the lantern, she gets to her mark, and..." She stopped, pressed her lips together. "She just won't say it. We've had 3 rehearsals. She hasn't gotten the line out loud once." I sat there on the tiny chair with my knees up by my ears and felt the whole thing land because of course that was my kid. The girl who narrates her own drawings under her breath, who is the funniest person in any room and has decided no one's allowed to know, the girl who draws herself a little apart from the family in pencil like she ran out of certainty. Of course you hand her a lantern, and a sentence and a room full of folding chairs, and she looks at her shoes. "She's not in trouble," Maya said quickly, reading my quiet wrong or maybe reading it exactly right. "She's not the only shy one. I wanted you to know because I think she could do it. I really do. She's got this hole." She moved her hand in the air, looking for it. "There's somebody in there. You can feel it. She just hasn't decided it's safe to let anybody see." And I looked at the woman across the table, in the buzzing fluorescent light, telling me about my daughter holding a whole self carefully behind her teeth and not letting anyone see it, and I thought, yes, I know the feeling. I have been doing the adult version of that for 4 years. I didn't say that either. "What do?" I said instead, to help, at home. Her face did the warmest thing it had done yet. "You don't push it. You don't run lines at the dinner table like a drill. That's the worst thing. She'd make an inch. You just make it ordinary. You let her hear that the line exists, in the air like it's no big deal, and you don't watch her face when you do it. Don't watch her decide. Kids can feel you watching them decide. You're good at this, I said, before I could stop it. It came out plainer than I meant. Not a line, just true. And for a second the agreement we'd both grabbed onto wobbled, because that wasn't a sentence one parent says to one teacher about a third grader. That was a sentence with my whole history in it. I'd watched this person be good at things for 2 years of my young life, and the word good had years of weight under it, and we both heard the weight. She looked at me. The professional smile slipped, just a corner of it, and underneath was a person I actually recognized. I've had practice, she said, careful, even. But she held the look one beat past where she had to. I held it back, one beat past where I had to. Then we both looked at the folder. At the same instant, like it had called our names, and the railing was back, and we grabbed it. There's a thing the brain does with a face you used to know. I read about it once, the way you read things at 2 in the morning when you can't sleep, and the phone is right there. They call it the mere exposure effect. The idea is that we come to like things simply because we've seen them before. Familiarity itself does the work. A face you've looked at 1,000 times has a head start in your chest that a stranger's face will never have. And I sat there on that child's chair and felt the whole stupid mechanism of it firing, this head start, 22 years deep, that I had no say over and had not asked for. My body liked her face before my brain got a vote. It had liked it the second the voice came through the door. We did the report card. We genuinely did. She walked me through the reading levels and the math where Lily was strong, where she could use a little practice. And I nodded like a man absorbing information, and absorbed maybe a third of it, because the other 2/3 of me was busy with the simple fact of her hands turning pages. And around the edges of the official part, the other conversation kept leaking in. Sideways, the way she'd said it would have to. "You still up north?" she asked, not looking up, light, like it was a normal thing to ask a parent. It is not a normal thing to ask a parent. "Never left, stayed in town." I shrugged, which is hard to do on a tiny chair. "Took over my uncle's electrical outfit. You?" "I left," she said it simply. "For a long while, came back 2 years ago." A pause. "My mom got sick, I came back for that, and then," she turned a page, "then I just stayed. The school had an opening." I knew her mother. I'd sat at her mother's kitchen table at 17, and been fed pie I didn't ask for and didn't refuse. I wanted to ask, is she? But the way Maya had said got sick had a finished shape to it, a closed door at the end of the sentence, and I knew that door. I have a few of those doors myself. You learn to hear when somebody's locked one. "I'm sorry," I said, "about the door, not the words." "Thank you." She heard which one I meant. She always could. So that was who left and who stayed. She left, she came back, she stayed for grief, and then stayed past it. I never left at all, which I'd have told you was the safe choice and the smart choice, and which suddenly, sitting there, felt a little like I'd been standing in the same field for 2 decades, while the weather changed around me. I don't know why her leaving and coming back sounded braver than my staying, it just did. It sat there between us on the table next to the folder. "And you," she said. Not a question, carefully not a question. She tapped the corner of Lily's folder, the family drawing tucked behind the report. 3 figures and the 4th one a little apart in pencil. "It's just you and her?" "It's just me and her." She nodded. She didn't say sorry, which I was grateful for. She didn't say anything about how, which I was more grateful for. She just took the information in, the way you take in weather, and let it be true without making me hold it up to the light. "She's lucky," Maya said quietly. "Whatever else, she's got a dad who put on a tie." I felt my hand go up toward the knot before I could stop it. "It's crooked. It's a little crooked." And then, because she could not help it, because she never could, the corner of her mouth went and she said, "You always did fight a collar. Seen your pictures. You looked like the shirt was attacking you." It got out of me before I could close the gate. A laugh.
A real one.
Not the polite kind. The kind that surprises you on its way up. Because I remembered those pictures. I remembered being 17 and red-faced in a borrowed shirt with this exact person 3 feet to my left in the photographer's waiting room, making it 10 times worse by narrating my struggle under her breath, and the memory was so specific and so far away and so suddenly close that the laugh just came. And she laughed too. At the same time, the 2 of us on tiny chairs in an empty school at night laughing at a photograph from before either of us was a whole adult. It lasted about a second and a half, and then we both heard it. We both heard how easy it was, how fast we'd fallen back into a rhythm 2 people don't get to have after 22 years and a door each, and I watched her pull back from it the same exact instant I did. Saw her sit up a little straighter. Saw her reach for the folder, square its edges, become the teacher again, put the railing back between us with both hands. "Anyway," she said. The professional warmth slid back over the rest of it like a cloud over the sun. "Lily, the play's the third Friday. You'll get a real flyer. I'll make sure one actually gets to you and not to the bottom of the backpack." "I'd appreciate that. And if she doesn't want to do it, she paused. "That's allowed too. I won't make her, but I'll if she tried." She closed the folder and held it out across the table, both of us reaching, careful not to let our hands meet on it, the handoff choreographed like we'd rehearsed. She's got more in her than she's letting out. I'd just hate for her to learn this young that hiding is safer. I took the folder. I looked at it instead of her, because that one had gone in deep, and I didn't trust my face for a second. I'd just hate for her to learn this young that hiding is safer. She was talking about an 8-year-old and a lantern. I knew that. She had no idea she was also describing the man on the tiny chair in front of her, the one who'd folded himself into a drawer 4 years ago and gotten comfortable, who had one sentence ready when anybody asked who he was. She didn't know that. She couldn't have, and yet it sat in my chest like she'd reached across the table and set it there on purpose. I stood up. My knees made a sound I chose to ignore. There were no more parents in the hall behind me. The building had gone quiet around us, just the buzz of the lights and a janitor's cart squeaking somewhere 2 rooms over. And I understood that my 15 minutes were up, had been up, that the next parent would have come and gone already if there had been one, and that the only honest reason to keep standing in room 11 was a reason I was not going to say out loud. "Thank you," I said, "for all of it. She's lucky to have you in there with her." Something moved across Maya's face. The careful thing slipped, just for a half second, just enough for me to see that she was holding a railing too, that the agreement we'd grabbed in the doorway had cost her something to keep, same as me. "It's good to see you, Owen," she said, quiet, off the script. "My name again?" Said like it belonged to a whole person. "It really is." I didn't. She stopped. Squared the folder she was no longer holding. "I'm glad it was you," at the door. "Me too," I said. And I should have left. I had the folder, I had the report, I had the play date on the calendar, and a crooked tie and 22 years sitting in my chest like a stone. I had everything a normal dad walks out of a parent-teacher conference with, and a great deal that a normal dad does not. The smart thing, the safe thing, the thing the man in the drawer would have done, was to nod and turn and walk back down that hallway of construction paper cats, and drive home, and never, ever let himself think about room 11 again. I got as far as the door. I had my hand on the frame. "Maya." She looked up, and I felt the whole 4 years folded weight of myself lean toward saying a true thing, the way you lean off a high place before you've decided to jump, and I caught myself at the very edge of it, because it was too much, too fast in a child's classroom with a janitor squeaking 2 doors down. So I didn't jump. I asked her something smaller instead, something with a door I could keep my hand on. "The play," I said. "When are the rehearsals, the next ones? In case Lily wants. In case I should." Her face did something I'd spend the whole drive home trying to name. "Thursdays," she said, "after school. 4 o'clock. There's a..." She tilted her head, careful, testing the weight of it. "There's a coffee place across the street. Parents wait there sometimes, while the kids run it." "Thursdays," I said. 4. "Thursdays, 4. She held my eyes 1 beat past where she had to for the lat night, and we both let it happen, and then she let it go. "I'll save you a chair, Owen, a real one, grown-up sized." I went out into the hallway of cats with my daughter's folder in my hand and a Thursday in my head, and I made it all the way to the truck before I let myself feel the size of what had just quietly started. I went to the first Thursday telling myself it was for Lily. I told myself that the whole drive. I had a folding chair in my head and a coffee place across the street and a daughter who needed to be picked up at 5, and those were all true things, and they made a fine wall to stand behind, and I stood behind it. Lily ran into the gym with the other kids and didn't look back, which is its own small heartbreak, and I crossed the street to the coffee place, with my hands in my jacket, like a man with nowhere particular to be. Maya was already there, grown-up chair. She'd saved me one. That was how it started, the Thursdays. It was a real place, the kind with mismatched mugs and a bell on the door that scared you the first 3 times. 2 other parents came the first week and sat by the window and left after 20 minutes. After that, it was mostly just us, because the other parents had jobs that didn't end at 4, and lives that didn't have a hole in them shaped exactly like this. We had an hour. The kids ran the rehearsal across the street with a college girl Maya trusted, and Maya and I sat with 2 cooling coffees and talked about a play, and then about everything that wasn't a play. We were good at it for a while. The hiding inside the kid. We talked about Lily the way you'd talk about weather you both happened to be standing in. How the lantern was going. How she'd gotten to her mark twice now and almost, the line still wasn't coming, but she wasn't crying anymore, which Maya said was the whole game at that age. Get them to the edge without the edge scaring them. Let them stand there a while. Don't watch them decide. And around Lily, the way it always had to, the other thing kept leaking in. I learned things across those Thursdays. Slow ones. She drank her coffee black now, which she hadn't at 17, when she'd put so much sugar in it that it stopped being coffee. She'd taught in 3 different towns before this one. She'd had a cat that died last spring and hadn't gotten another, because she wasn't sure she'd be in this town long enough to be fair to one. And that sentence sat funny in my chest for a reason I didn't poke at. She knew a frightening amount about the worst movies ever made. She still narrated under her breath when she thought no one could hear, and now I was the only one close enough to hear it, and I'd catch the tail end of some private commentary about the man at the counter or the dog tied up outside. And I'd have to look at my coffee so she wouldn't see my face do what my face wanted to do. It was the 4th Thursday that it stopped being small talk. I should have seen it coming. You build a thing an hour a week, you don't get to keep it polite forever. It rained that day. Hard enough that the bell on the door stopped scaring anybody because nobody came in. The owner went in the back. It was just us, and the rain on the window and the 2 mugs. And Maya was telling me about her mother, which she hadn't shown before, not really. Not past the closed door she'd shut on it in room 11. She told me about coming back to this town to watch a person disappear in pieces. She told me about the year of it. The casseroles from neighbors. She didn't know. The way the house got quiet in a way a house gets quiet only once. After? That was the plan. Bury her, sell the house, go back to my life. She turned the mug, a quarter turn on the table. And then I just didn't. The school had an opening and I took it and I told myself it was temporary and that was 2 years ago. She looked up. I don't actually know what I'm doing here, Owen. I want that on the record. People think I came home on purpose. I came home for a funeral and then I couldn't think of a reason good enough to leave again. I sat with that. The rain did some of the talking. That's not the same as failing, I said. No, a small breath, but it's not the same as choosing either. I spent a lot of my 20s very sure that leaving made me brave. She almost laughed. And here I am back where I started, in a worse job than I had, telling a story about being temporary, so I don't have to admit I just stopped. I'd had her pegged, those first weeks, as the one who won, the one who left. I'd been sitting on my tiny chair in room 11, making her leaving into something braver than my staying, like she'd gone off and lived a whole brave life while I rusted in place. And here she was telling me the leaving cost her, and the coming back cost her more, and the years in between had a hole in them too, just a different shape than mine. She wasn't the untouched one. There's a comfort in finding out that the person across the table is also just patching a thing they don't talk about, and there's a danger in it too, because that's the kind of thing that pulls 2 careful people off their separate walls. Why didn't you ever? I said and stopped, because it wasn't my business and I knew it wasn't. Marry somebody? Have the whole thing? She said it for me, so I didn't have to. She always could. I got close once. He was kind. He wanted the whole thing. She looked out at the rain, and I kept waiting to feel like I couldn't lose him, and I never did. And one day he asked me why I held a piece of myself back like rent I might need, and I didn't have an answer, and that was the answer. She wrapped both hands around the mug. I'm good at the door. I told you that. I've had practice. I just didn't tell you I practice on people too. There's a word for what she'd just done. I'd read about it, the same way I read about everything, at the hour of night, when the phone is the only light in the room. Self-disclosure, they call it, when you let somebody see the part you usually keep behind your teeth. It's no small thing. It's the actual machinery of how 2 strangers become anything else. You hand over a piece you can't take back, and you watch what the other person does with it. And that, watching, she'd just handed me one. The rent she might need. The piece she holds back. She'd set it on the table between the 2 cold mugs, and now she was looking at me to see what I'd do with it. And for about 4 seconds, I almost did the bravest thing I'd done in 4 years. I felt it the way I'd felt it at the classroom door, that lean. The whole folded weight of me tipping toward saying a true thing back, because that's how it's supposed to work. She gives you a piece and you give one back, and the table gets a little less lonely. I had the true thing right there. I could feel the shape of it. I could have told her about the drawer, about being a sentence, about 4 years of being nothing but Lily's dad, and how some nights I stood in my own kitchens at 11 o'clock and couldn't have told you one thing I wanted for myself if you'd held my hand to a flame. I had it all the way up to my teeth. And I flinched. I don't have a prettier word for it. She handed me the realest thing she had, and I felt myself want to match it, and the wanting scared me so badly that I did the thing the man in the drawer does. I picked up my coffee, I looked at the window, and I said in a voice I made very steady, "We should probably check on the kids." I watched it land on her. I watched her see exactly what I'd done. She's too smart not to. She'd opened a door and stood in it, and I'd looked at my shoes, and something in her face closed gently, the way a person closes a door when they're trying not to make you feel the slam. "Yeah," she said, "probably." And we walked out into the rain and across the street, and didn't say the next thing, and I picked up Lily, and Maya said, "See you Thursday," in the teacher voice. And I drove home with my daughter narrating the rehearsal in the back seat and a stone in my chest that was entirely my own fault. That should have been the worst of it. It wasn't. It was the next week that the town got involved, because the town always does. I was at the hardware store buying wire nuts, and a woman I half recognized, somebody's mother, somebody from Lily's class, said, "I saw you at the coffee place with Miss Bell." And she said it with a smile that had a question folded inside it, the kind of smile this town has been making at people since before either of us was born. "Cute," she said. "The way Mark's wife says cute. The way that means I have decided a thing about you and I will be telling others." I said something. I don't remember what. Something flat enough to close it, but it followed me out to the truck and sat in the passenger seat the whole way home. Because here's what the woman in the hardware store didn't know she'd done. She'd turned a thing that was mine into a thing the town was watching. An hour a week behind a wall of weather and cold coffee, that was mine, that was safe, that nobody had a vote in. And the second somebody saw it, it stopped being a quiet hour and started being a story with my daughter's name attached to the edge of it. Owen Bell and the teacher. Lily Bell's dad and Lily Bell's teacher. And Lily was 8, and Lily was in that classroom 5 days a week. And whatever this was, it had her standing right in the splash zone of it now, whether I'd chosen that or not. And Lily had started to notice. That was the part that took the air out of me. She didn't say much. Kids that age don't ask the question straight. But she'd started saying Miss Bell at home in a particular way. "Miss Bell says the play's going to be good. Miss Bell asked about you." She'd watch my face when she said it, a quick check, there and gone. The same check Maya warned me kids do, the don't watch me decid check, except now my own daughter was running it on me. She'd caught something. Some warmth in the air on Thursdays that didn't match the rest of the week. And she was 8 and she'd already lost a whole parent, and she was watching her one remaining one to see if the ground was about to move again. That's what wanting something costs, I thought, driving home. Not me. Her. I want 1 hour a week in a coffee shop and the bill comes to my kid. She's the one standing in the splash zone. She's the one who'll feel it if it goes wrong. I'd built my whole flat little life around making sure that exact thing couldn't happen to her again, and here I was an hour a week putting a crack in it. So I had every reason in the world to stop, to miss a Thursday, to send a different parent, to shrink the thing back down to a folder and a report card and a polite nod in the pickup line. Every safe instinct I had was pointing at the exit. And then Lily's play almost broke her, and I saw the whole thing from the wrong end. It was the second to last rehearsal before the real night. I came early. I crossed the street early, stood in the gym doorway out of the way, because I wanted to see it, the lantern, the mark, the line, my kid being a person in a room I never got to see. And I watched my daughter walk out to her mark with the little tin lantern and get there and stop. And the whole gym waited. And she opened her mouth, and her chin started to go, and her eyes found me in the doorway in pure animal panic, and she didn't say the line. She just stood there holding a lantern in front of 40 empty folding chairs, frozen solid, every muscle in her locked around a single sentence she could not get past her teeth. I knew exactly what I was looking at. I'd been looking at it in the mirror for 4 years. Maya crossed the gym to her, didn't rush, knelt down to lantern height, and said something I couldn't hear, and Lily nodded without the line coming out, and Maya put a hand on her shoulder and walked her off to the side and let her stand there a while, not watching her decide. And then Maya looked up across the whole gym and found me in the doorway, and her face wasn't the teacher's, and it wasn't the closed door from the coffee shop. It was something plainer. It just looked at me, and looked at my daughter standing rigid in the corner holding everything in, and then looked back at me, and I swear to God it didn't have to say a word. She didn't either. She didn't say it. She just held the look one beat past where she had to, like she always did, and let me do the math myself. And I did the math myself, standing in that doorway, and it about took my legs out. Because there it was, the whole thing. My daughter frozen with a sentence stuck behind her teeth because somebody was watching her decide, and her father standing in the doorway who'd had a true sentence stuck behind his teeth in a coffee shop 1 week ago, and had picked up his cup and looked at the window rather than say it. The same animal, the same lock. Maya had said it in room 11, and I'd taken it home like a stone. I'd just hate for her to learn this young that hiding is safer. She'd been talking about an 8-year-old and a lantern, and she'd been describing the man on the tiny chair. And now here we both were, the kid and the man, the two of us, hiding in plain sight in the same gymnasium. And I was about to do the most cowardly thing a parent can do. I was about to ask my daughter to be brave while I hid. I was going to stand in folding chairland on Friday night and need her to walk out and say her line in front of the whole town. Need it the way you need your kid to be okay. And I was going to do it as a man who couldn't get 4 honest seconds out of his own mouth across a table from the one person he'd ever wanted. I was going to demand from an 8-year-old the exact courage I wouldn't spend myself. You can't do that. I knew it the second I thought it, knew it in the place where you can't argue with yourself. You don't get to ask somebody to walk out to their mark and say the scary thing out loud while you stand safe in the doorway with yours locked up tight. Courage isn't a thing you can hand your kid like a lantern. They learn it the way Lily learned everything, by watching the one adult left to watch. The rehearsal ended. Lily came out, not crying, lanternless, my brave girl who hadn't said the line, and took my hand, and we crossed the street. In the cross-the-street shop window, Maya was clearing the 2 mugs we hadn't touched, and she looked up and saw us through the glass, and I lifted a hand, and she lifted one back, careful, a question in it, the same question that had been sitting between us since I picked up my coffee and looked at the window. I didn't have the answer yet, not the whole one. But I had the shape of it now, and the shape of it scared me worse than anything had in 4 years, because it meant the next thing I did couldn't be hiding. The flyer was on the fridge by then, a real one, the one Maya promised would make it home and not to the bottom of a backpack. 3rd Friday, 6 o'clock, the whole town in folding chairs, my daughter and a lantern and one line about a storm coming. And me, in the dark with everybody else, about to find out if I was a man who could ask his kid to do the brave thing without doing one himself, or whether for the first time in 4 years I was going to have to walk out to a mark of my own. The 3rd Friday came the way Fridays do when you've been dreading one. Too fast, and then all at once. I got Lily into the costume in our kitchen at 5 o'clock, a gray smock and a paper hat that did not want to stay paper hat shaped. And she stood very still while I worked the safety pin, the way she stands still at the doctor, not calm. The other thing that looks like calm from across a room. I'd been wearing the same animal stillness for 4 years, and I knew it when I saw it on my own kid. You don't have to be good, I told her. You just have to be there. She looked at me like she knew that was a lie adults tell. She wasn't wrong. The gym was full by 6. The whole town, more or less, the way it shows up for these things. Folding chairs in long rows under the basketball hoops, the good banner up, the construction paper world I'd walked past in the hallway 3 months ago now strung along the back wall in a line. I found a seat near the aisle. Not too close, close enough. And there she was, the other side of the gym, in a cardigan instead of the teacher clothes, herding 8-year-olds into a wobbling line behind a bedsheet they were using for a curtain. Maya, she didn't look for me. Or she did, and was better at it than I'd have been, because I never caught her doing it. I want to tell you I had a plan walking in. I didn't. I had the shape of a thing from the doorway last week, and a stone in my chest and a daughter in a paper hat, and that was the whole of what I came with. The play was about a storm, a town that sees one coming and what the people do in the hour before it lands. 8-year-olds in smocks, holding tin lanterns, narrating weather. It was exactly as good and as terrible as you'd want it to be. A boy forgot a whole speech and just stood there, grinning until the kid next to him fed it to him in a stage whisper the entire gym could hear. A girl took a bow in the middle, for no reason, and got the biggest laugh of the night. The parents around me did that low, warm rumble parents do. All of us watching our own kid and pretending to watch the play. And then it got to the part with the lantern. I knew it was coming the way you know your own street in the dark. The light changed, the other kids drew back, and Lily walked out alone to the center of the gym floor, with the little tin lantern in both hands to her mark. The exact mark she'd frozen on every time. She got there, she stopped, and the gym went quiet the way it's supposed to, the held breath quiet, the whole room leaning in for the small brave thing about to happen. And my daughter opened her mouth and nothing came out. I felt it in my own throat. That's the only way I can say it. I felt the line stick in her like it was stuck in me. Her chin started its slow betraying thing and went out across all those rows of faces, all that town. And the panic in them was the purest thing I have ever seen. She found me, of course she found me. the way she always finds me in a doorway. And she stood there frozen in front of the entire world holding a light, asking me with her whole face to make it stop. And here is the thing I had wrong, the thing I'd had wrong the whole time. I'd spent a week telling myself the brave thing, and the confession were two different errands. That first I had to fix me, the man in the drawer, the coffee I'd picked up instead of the truth, and then someday separately, cleaned up and certain, I could be the kind of father who asks his kid to walk out to a mark. Two tasks, one after the other. And I was sitting there in a folding chair watching my daughter drown in the exact lock I lived in, and I understood it was one task. It was always one task. You don't teach a kid courage by getting brave first in private where it's safe. There is no version of this where I get to be brave later, after, alone. The only place it counts is the place it scares you, in front of the people, with the light in your hands. So I did the thing. I didn't stand up and make a speech. I want to be clear, because I told you 4 sections ago that this isn't that kind of story, and it isn't. Nobody's eyes were on me. Every face in that gym was on the frozen girl in the middle of the floor. I was just a tired man in a navy tie in a folding chair, and what I did was small enough that the person on either side of me probably never saw it. I caught her eyes, and I held them. And I did the thing Maya do across 2 cold coffees and a whole gym, the thing she'd done to me in a doorway last week. I didn't watch her decide. I gave her my face, the whole open thing, no wall, no drawer, the seam I'd kept pinned shut for 4 years, just let all the way go where my own kid could see it. I let her watch her father be afraid right out in the open and do it anyway. I mouthed the first word of her line, just the first word. Not to feed it to her like the boy got fed, to stand in it with her. To say I'm out here too on a mark of my own. Look, it doesn't kill you. She watched me, 1 second too. And my daughter took a breath, and she said her line. It wasn't even a good line. It was 1 sentence about a storm coming and the town getting ready. Her voice cracked clean down the middle of it, and she said it anyway. All the way to the end, the whole sentence. The one that had been stuck behind her teeth since September. The gym did the warm rumble, the soft scatter of the kind of clapping you do for somebody small who did a hard thing. She held the lantern up. She'd done it. I don't have good words for what that did to me. I've tried. Something I'd had folded up came open, and it didn't fold back. The rest of the play happened. The storm came and went, paper rain, and a flashlight for lightning. And the kids took a ragged, wonderful bow in a line, Lily on the end of it. Lantern still in her hand because nobody told her to put it down. She found me again over the heads of the clapping town, and she did not do the careful check this time. She just grinned the gap-toothed grin straight at me, full, no question in it, and I have been chasing that grin for 4 years without knowing it was the thing I was chasing. People stood, chairs scraped. The gym turned back into a gym. I found Maya by the side door, where the kids were being handed back to their parents in a happy mob. She had Lily's smock over one arm. She handed it to me without the crowd, and I almost took the smock and said something about the play being great and walked my daughter to the truck. I felt the old move come up. The coffee, the window. I had it all the way to my teeth, same as before. And I didn't pick up the cup this time. Maya. She looked at me then. The teacher face was mostly gone, just tired and careful and braced for me to do what I did in the rain. I picked up my coffee, I said. Last Thursday. You handed me the realest thing you had, and I looked at the window and I said, let's check on the kids. I knew exactly what I was doing. I've been thinking about it all week. The mob of parents flowed around us. Nobody was listening. It was the most private place in the world, that loud doorway. I do that. I've been doing it for 4 years. There's a version of me I folded up and put in a drawer the year Lily's mom left. And the part that stayed out knows how to make the money and cut the sandwich, and it is very, very good at picking up the coffee. She didn't say anything. She does that. Lets you get to the end of it yourself. You said in room 11 you'd hate for her to learn this young, that hiding is safer. My voice did the thing Lily's did. I let it. I made my kid do the brave thing tonight while I sat there. I'm not doing that. I'm not asking her for something I won't spend. Owen, quiet, warning almost. You don't have to do this in a doorway. There's no other place that counts. I'd learned that 30 minutes ago, in a folding chair. If I wait for the clean version, the dignified version, the one where I've got it all sorted out first, it never happens. You know that. You've got a whole speech you never gave a kind man, and a piece of yourself you keep like rent. We're the same animal. We both know how to stand in a door and not walk through it. That got her. I watched it get her. So here's the true thing I didn't say. I made myself slow down. Lily was 20 feet away showing her lantern to another kid's mother. I have wanted, since the second I heard your voice through that classroom door, one thing for myself, not for Lily, for me. The first thing I've wanted for myself in 4 years. And it scared me so badly I spent 12 Thursdays pretending it was a school thing about a play. I looked at her. The whole open face, no wall. It was never about the play. I came back every week for you. I've been coming back for you the whole time and hiding it inside my own daughter. And that's the cowardly version. And I'm done with it. That's the thing I flinched from. There it is. Out on the mark. The mob moved around us. A kid laughed somewhere. The lights buzzed. Maya looked at me for a long second. The way she looked at me in room 11 before either of us was anything but a name on a folder, and whatever she'd shut gently. That day in the rain, I watched it come back open, slower, more careful, but open. You said the first word of her line, she said. I saw you, from across the gym. A small breath that was almost the laugh. I didn't know what you were doing. I thought you were feeding it to her. I was standing in it with her. I know. She did the thing where her eyes went bright, and she smiled straight through it anyway. I figured that out about a second later. That's when I knew you were going to come find me at this door. She shook her head. You really did make me wait in a coffee shop window twice, Owen Bell. I'm slow, I run conduit, we're methodical people. That got the laugh all the way out of her. The real one, the one she covered with the back of her hand at 17 and still does, and I felt 22 years fold down to nothing in the space of it. Thursday, she said. Coffee. The grown-up chair. She held the look one beat past, where she had to the way she always did. And you don't get to bring the play as an excuse. There's no play anymore. It's just going to have to be us in a coffee shop with no kids to hide inside of. No wall, I said. No wall. Lily came back across the floor then. Lantern swinging, paper hat, finally surrendered to gravity. She looked up at the two of us standing in the door, her dad and her teacher, and she did one quick check between us, the old check there, and gone. And then, because she's 8 and she's the funniest person I know and she misses nothing, she didn't ask the question. She just grinned wider and said, Miss Bell, I said my line. You did, Maya said. I heard the whole thing. My dad helped. Lily looked at me, from his chair. He did the first word with his mouth. I saw that too, Maya said. He's not very good at it, Lily told her confidentially, like she was doing me a favor. But he tried. And the two of them laughed, my daughter and the girl I loved at 17, in a doorway in a loud gym at me. And I stood there in my bad navy tie, holding a gray smock and a paper hat, and I let it happen, all of it, the whole open seam of it, and I did not fold a single thing back up. We drove home, the three of us. Maya followed in her own car, because some things you do slow and not all in one night. Lily narrated the whole play from the back seat, every kid's mistake, the bow girl, the boy who forgot his speech, the flashlight lightning. She told it the way she narrates her drawings, under her breath and then loud, a sports announcer for a game only she had played in. I drove and I listened, and somewhere on the dark road between the school and our street I noticed something I hadn't noticed in 4 years. I was thinking about what I wanted. Not what Lily wanted, not what the morning needed. What I wanted, tomorrow, and the Thursday after that, and the one after that. There was a man walking around in my chest again that I'd put in a drawer the year the papers got signed, and he had opinions. And he wanted things, and one of them was driving in the car behind us. If you'd asked me 3 months ago who I was, I had the sentence ready. I'm Lily's dad, and that's the whole of it. I'd have said it flat, like a road number, the same way I read a name off a classroom door without ever letting it land. It's a longer sentence now. I'm still working out the rest of it, but it's longer. Here's the part I keep turning over. The part I'd hand to you if we were the ones across the 2 cold coffees. We all fold a version of ourselves up and put it away. After the divorce, after the loss, after the year the house goes quiet in the way a house goes quiet only once. We tell ourselves it's responsible. We tell ourselves the drawer is safe and the smaller self is enough. And wanting something for yourself is a thing you'll get back to later, when it's clean, when it won't cost anybody. And the years go by, and the drawer gets comfortable, and one day you can't find the rest of your own sentence, and you've mostly stopped looking. So that's what I'd ask you. The self you folded up and put away after the thing that broke. The wanting you keep like rent you might need someday. If somebody you used to be walked back through a door tomorrow and said your actual name, said it like you were still a whole person, would you be brave enough to want something again right out in the open, in front of everybody, with the light shaking in your hands? Or would you reach for the coffee and look at the window and say something safe? I almost reached for the coffee. Twice. I want you to know that. The brave version isn't the one where you're not afraid. It's the one where you say the true thing anyway, on the mark, with your kid watching. If stories like this one stay with you, there are more of them here on the channel. I'll leave the rest of my sentence for another night.